and welcome everyone to this very special edition of Manomet's Small Seed webinar series. My name is Andrea Ferreira. I'm Manomet's Science Communication Manager, and today we are joining the celebration of the 40 years of the Western Hemisphere. I'm switching between languages, it's kind of tricky. The Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network. I was thinking of the name in Spanish. So before we begin, there's more housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded so we can later upload it to our YouTube channel in both languages, Spanish or English. We have a Q&A box in the menu that you will have on the Zoom platform in your screens. And please feel free to write your questions in English or Spanish in that box. And lastly, but not least, we want to know where you're all zooming in from today. So if you can just go to the chat and type in where you're at. If you're maybe near a Western site and you want to tell us all about it, I'm actually quite near the only Western site in my country, Asunción's Bay. So here with me today, it's Rob Clay, who serves two roles with us at Manomet. He's the Vice President of Flyways and also the Director of the Executive Office of the Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network, or WHSRN, as we call it in short, and RAP in Spanish. So Rob, you will pick up the accent. He's not from the Americas, but he's been here for a while now. He's a native of the United Kingdom and has been interested in neotropical birds for a long time now. So he's been working with shorebird conservation for over 20 years and has been part of this amazing network for several more years. I can see people joining from several parts of the US, from Paraguay as well, which is our country where Rob is also based today. And without further ado, I would just like to give this virtual stage to Rob so he can tell us all about the amazing story of WHSRN and all the things. I saw he had some great images and pictures that I've never seen before. So Rob, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrea, and thank you everyone for joining. This is really quite a challenge to try and give an overview of 40 years of WHSRN history in just a few minutes. I could probably be here for many hours. I will try not to be. I will try to keep this brief. But yes, I really wanted to take this opportunity to, firstly, to introduce WHSRN for anyone who doesn't know it, and then to just share a little bit of the history of really how it has become what it is, which is, of course, I'm completely unbiased, I would say, an extremely effective model and great example of how to deliver site-based conservation at scale. So with that, I'll start by saying it really is a great honor not only to be giving this presentation, but to be the director of the Executive Office of WHSRN, and very much of what I'm going to be presenting here is due to many people over the years who have dedicated time and passion and committed to the cause of shorebird conservation in the Americas. I will be mentioning some names along the way. Of course, one of the great risks of mentioning some names is that you leave other names out. I'm not intending to offend anyone by leaving names out. And to me, that actually speaks to one of the real strengths of WHSRN, which is just the incredible number of people throughout the Americas who have been involved over the years and feel that they are parts of the history of this incredible initiative. So with that, I will pass to a slide just giving a very brief introduction to what is WHSRN, what is the Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network, for anyone joining us who's not familiar with this effort. It is a voluntary network of sites whereby the people, the organizations that are responsible for the management of the sites have committed to including shorebirds within the priorities for conservation, for management of the sites. So it is not a legally binding instrument. It's rather what I prefer to refer to as a moral commitment. These are people, communities, local businesses, global businesses in some case, recognizing that they are the custodians of an incredibly important resource for shorebirds and committing to safeguarding that resource for shorebirds and for future generations. At present, we have 126 sites in the network, covering 20 countries. In terms of the partners, the organizations, the communities working at those sites, we have over 450 partners as part of the network and covering in total almost 16 million hectares of critical habitats for shorebirds. And what WHSRN looks to achieve is firstly to establish local, regional, and international recognition for the sites so that people are proud and aware of just how important these sites are. Then we look to develop science, management, good governance, and community engagement tools to help ensure the safeguarding and the sustainable management of the sites for the future. We're a network, so we look to build a strong international network of sites, sharing experiences, lessons learned, opportunities, challenges, and capacity across the network of sites. And importantly, we serve as an international resource and convener for shorebird conservation in the Americas. Now, the origins of WHSRN actually go back to really two groundbreaking efforts. The first actually established by Manomet, by Brian Harrington, the International Shorebird Survey, which was established in 1974. So a monitoring scheme, which has gradually expanded throughout the Americas. And then a really mind-boggling effort by some shorebird biologists, Di Morrison, Ken Ross at the Canadian Wildlife Service to undertake an aerial survey of the entire coastline of South America to identify critical areas for shorebirds. And that effort was undertaken in the early 1980s. And really the combination of those two efforts really highlighted how shorebirds concentrate in a relatively small number of relatively discrete sites and really got the shorebird conservation community thinking about the need for not only site-based conservation, but the benefits through achieving that through a connected network of sites. These efforts were happening in parallel to a number of other important things. There are a number of researchers, both from North America and South America, starting to work with shorebirds and building a network of concerned researchers and conservationists. There are also a series of migratory bird workshops convened by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, bringing people together from throughout the Americas. So really all of this came together and led to an effort to create what was initially proposed as a network of sister reserves, as informal protected areas, but actually evolved to become this voluntary commitment of key sites. And here on the screen, I'm showing an article from the February 1986 edition of the Volante Migratorio, which was I think a 20-issue news bulletin that really helped build a community of migratory bird biologists and conservationists in the Americas. And this is in the 6th edition, and it highlighted this effort led by a number of organizations. And what I really wanted to flag here is right from the very beginning. So this is even before the designation of the very first site. It was a very much an international effort. The committee that came together to take this forward included representatives from Argentina, from Brazil, from Canada, from Chile, from Peru, and from the US. So right from the beginning, WHSRN was very much an international effort. And then 21st of May 1986, we had the designation of the very first site within the network, Delaware Bay. On the right, you can see the certificate. And again, just looking at the council members there are people from the US, from Canada, from Suriname, from Argentina, from Peru. So again, very much an international effort right from the very beginning. And this actually received coverage in the New York Times just 4 days after the designation ceremony. So already starting to have a significant impact with the designation of the very first site. Soon afterwards, there was a concerted effort to share the strategy, to promote it. There were scientific and sort of more popular articles published. The image on the right there really trying to capture what I was saying earlier about how shorebirds focus at just a few sites during their migration. So the whole approach was built around that, this concept of birds which are wintering across a broad geography come together at just a few migration sites on their way north, where they breed across a broad geography, and then vice versa when they migrate south again. Now, of course, you can't have a network with just one site. And very importantly, in 1987, the second site joined the network, the Bay of Fundy. The photo on the left shows that the designation ceremony, and actually standing there at the podium and actually under the flag of Suriname is Stanley Malone from Suriname, an invited guest at the designation ceremony. There very much to stress the connectivity between the shorebirds using the Bay of Fundy and the shorebirds wintering along the coastline of Suriname. And then we were very lucky 2 years ago to be able to bring together many of the same people to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the designation. I say with many of the same individuals, and hearing some of the stories about the original designation and just how important it was, not only in Canada, but also in Suriname. And I'll come back to that in a moment. In fact, I'll come to that now. So very soon after the designation of the second site, there were a series of additional sites added, several in the US, but then very importantly, 3 in Suriname. So we have a very significant part of the coastline of Suriname is safeguarded as WHSRN sites. And in fact, George Finney, who featured in the photos from the Bay of Fundy, and who was the chair of the WHSRN Council at that time, traveled down to Suriname for the designation ceremony for these 3 sites. It was such an important event that the president of Suriname actually declared a national holiday. Wonderful if that happened more often. I'd go to far more designation ceremonies. But no, seriously, just to really highlight just how significant this was. And perhaps very poignantly, George, when he had an opportunity to go to the coast as part of the celebration of these sites, actually saw some semi-palmated sandpipers banded that literally just 7 or 8 days previously had been banded in the Bay of Fundy by George and colleagues. So really, you know, but what better way to really show the connection than seeing it sort of, you know, in the flesh and in such an amazingly short window of time. And then 2 years ago, we were able to be in Suriname and again celebrate the 35th anniversary of those sites and bring together many of the local people that have been key in this process. And again, just learning and sharing about how important this had been in terms of helping to safeguard the coastline of Suriname, which remains part of the largest continuous extent of mangroves in the world. Just really 2 years into WHSRN as an initiative, there was already a lot of clarity about where the key sites actually are, the more or less the migration routes between them. So, the arrows you're seeing on the maps here represent what was understood, what was believed to be the migration routes of shorebirds back then in the late 1980s. Our knowledge has, of course, changed significantly since then, thanks in part to tracking technology, but the arrows still look largely similar. So this was really close to spot on in terms of the critical sites and the migration routes that the birds are taking between those sites. The sites shown on this map, they hadn't all become WHSRN sites, but they were sites in the pipeline, and I'm pleased to say that with just one exception, all of the sites that are mentioned on this map as key sites for shorebirds are part of WHSRN, and of course many more now. Just to go through a little bit of the timeline. So in 1985, there was the very first meeting of a council of WHSRN, where Pete Myers was designated as or appointed as the chair, and a national Audubon actually was started in a coordination role. By 1987, that role was being shared with Manomet. And Pablo Canavari moved from Argentina to Manomet headquarters to become the first director of the WHSRN Executive Office. And then, right from the following year, a major need was identified and a significant investment made in addressing it, which was a whole series of training workshops in Latin America, starting actually with one in Cordoba in Argentina, and then in Paracas in Peru, and many more since then. So this was really focusing in on the need to build capacity to be able to study and work on shorebird conservation in Latin America. And in fact, many of our colleagues in Latin America working on shorebirds received their sort of their start through these workshops. Then come 1991, Pablo moved back to Argentina and actually opened a WHSRN office in Buenos Aires. And then being based back in the region, I think there was recognition that a focus was needed on more than just shorebirds, on broader waterbird and wetland conservation issues. So that actually led to WHSRN sponsoring the launch of Wetlands for the Americas, which then over time evolved to become Wetlands International. Wetlands for the Americas actually joined with several other organizations elsewhere in the world and formed Wetlands International. And for a while, it was actually the Wetlands for the Americas, Wetlands International office in Buenos Aires that coordinated WHSRN in Latin America. Manomet continued coordinating it in North America together with Canadian Wildlife Service. And then come 2000, WHSRN actually returned in its entirety to Manomet under the leadership of Jim Colvin. And there was a very important focus on really trying to expand the network in the US, a lot of close collaboration with the National Wildlife Refuge system to bring many refuges on board. Obviously, refuges aren't protected, but at that time, many of them were primarily managed for waterfowl, and opportunities were being missed to also manage them for shorebirds. So that was really the reasoning behind that focus on the refuge system. And then come 2003, my immediate predecessor, Charles Duncan, was hired as director of the executive office. And that saw a significant focus on expansion in Latin America. Something that I almost didn't mention was that change in sort of direction within wetlands and WHSRN returning to Manomet in its entirety was in part due to the untimely death of Pablo Cannavati, the first director, and that's who you can see on the screen, who unfortunately left us at a very early age, but has inspired so many shorebird conservationists and so much shorebird conservation in Latin America still to this day. Jumping back perhaps to 1995, and for the first and to date only time, there was actually a conference of all the WHSRN sites that existed at that time. So that's what you're seeing on the screen here, bringing together WHSRN sites across the Americas. This was a meeting held in Ottawa, in Canada. And that really speaks to what WHSRN is really about, or the secret to its success. Obviously, it's about shorebird conservation, but the secret to its success is about convening people, bringing people together. That often happens through the designation process, through official designation celebration events. On the screen here, the two images on the left show the celebration for the designation of Panama Bay as a site of hemispheric importance within the network. That also coincided with the 20th anniversary of the network. And then on the right, we actually see the people assembled for the 25th anniversary of WHSRN, which was celebrated at Delaware Bay. And many familiar faces in the audience, many fortunately still with us, unfortunately a couple who are no longer with us. But it's, again, WHSRN has really been about bringing people together for shorebird conservation. In part, a critical part is bringing people together as a hemispheric council, which actually brings oversight and guidance to the effort. Top left, you can see a photo from a meeting, I think, at the Fraser River, probably 10 years ago. Now, we don't just bring the council together to work, to have fun, to visit sites. They also get to work. That's what you can see at the bottom left. But another very important aspect is celebrating achievements of individuals and celebrating the organizations that support WHSRN and make the work possible. Top right, we have a selection of winners of the Pablo Cannavati Award. This is an award that Manomet gives every 2 years in honor of Pablo Cannavati and the incredible inspiration and contribution that he made to shorebird conservation. And here we're able to bring together 5 of the recipients, which actually have all played really important roles within the WHSRN network as well. And then at the bottom, recognizing the support of a key donor for supporting WHSRN along the Pacific Flyway. And then another thing that WHSRN has been very important doing is not only bringing people together, but helping to bridge barriers between different cultures, different languages, really showing how shorebirds do connect us across the hemisphere. Here we see Lillian Trapper from the Moose Cree First Nation in Canada, visiting Delaware Bay and learning about horseshoe crabs and the importance that horseshoe crabs play in the migration of shorebirds, which are a key part of Cree culture up in James Bay. And then one of the things which for me has been particularly inspiring is how certain groups of sites and partners at those sites that have really come together to develop work across those sites. We have some wonderful examples of those. The Linking Sites, Linking Wetlands initiative, which brought together Great Salt Lake, Mono Lake, Chaplin Lake, Mar Chiquita, and some other sites. Is a wonderful example of sites joined by Wilson's Fallow Rope, and that's actually where the image that I showed at the beginning of the slide, and you can actually see on the plaque, that's where it actually came from. If I had the chance to redesign the WHSRN logo, that's probably the image that I would choose. And another one is the Copper River International Migratory Bird Initiative, a wonderful initiative bringing together many WHSRN sites and partners working at those sites and other important sites for shorebirds along the Pacific flyway, sharing or connected by shared species. So, 40 years on, how are we doing? What does success actually look like? Well, if you look at the data on bird populations, shorebirds are unfortunately one of the groups that are undergoing the greatest declines in the Americas. This is a graph from a recent Birds of Canada report. There are similar graphs, unfortunately, for other countries, other geographies, all showing the same shorebirds suffering very significant declines. So, one quick answer is potentially we're really not doing a very good job. But I would counter that with, what would the declines look like if we hadn't been able to save, we hadn't been able to safeguard the critical sites that are part of the WHSRN network. And I suspect that the declines would look significantly worse. So whilst shorebirds are in a bad place, I personally have no doubt that they would be in a far worse place if it weren't for WHSRN and what we've been able to achieve. How are we looking to address those declines moving forward? Well, we need to expand the network. We need to bring more sites into the network. Currently, we have 126. There are something like 900 sites in total in the Americas, which potentially meets the criteria for WHSRN and really should be part of the network if we're going to deliver conservation for all shorebird species in the Americas. One way we're looking to bring on board more sites is using technology to help us identify critical areas. This is an example of tracking work, revealing potentially important areas within the Amazon basin. And here we're actually combining the tracking data with on-the-ground surveys to help reveal just how important the Amazon basin actually is for shorebirds. A few years back, I had the opportunity to participate in the 30th anniversary of Lahontan Valley as a WHSRN site. We had a wonderful time. There was even cake for the celebration. And then right at the end, one of the people who'd been involved in the original nomination said, we were so pleased we got the designation, and then we've waited 30 years for you to come back. That was actually a much appreciated comment and has really helped guide my thinking going forward. It's not just about the designation. There really has to be an investment in the sites. So we've really focused in recent years in trying to ensure effective management at sites, building capacity, making tools available, bringing together different groups at sites to try and ensure best management, including on agricultural lands, so looking at where there are agricultural lands, productive areas within WHSRN sites, working to define and implement what shorebird-friendly best practices actually look like in ways which also benefit the producers. We've also made a very significant investment in building, strengthening capacity across the network. Just in the past 2 years, we've had over 500 people completing 2 virtual training courses in shorebird conservation. And we've also been able to deliver 21 small grants for early career researchers and conservationists who are just getting started in shorebird conservation and really starting to build a network and a mentoring approach for them. We've also been doing a lot of work building broader constituencies to support efforts at sites, in particular through a lot of education materials, including a Discover Shorebirds curriculum. And I think very importantly, an area of our work which gets me really excited is engaging youth, so really connecting with the next generation and getting them infused and involved in efforts to help safeguard the natural resources, which ultimately our generation and theirs will depend upon. And then lastly, in terms of just trying to help create new opportunities, we've invested a lot in broader strategies which have WHSRN sites or a key sites approach nested within them. So for instance, the three shorebird conservation investment strategies for the Atlantic, Mid-Continent, and Pacific flyways, also for the Migratory Bird Initiative. There are also a series of national shorebird plans and efforts under the Convention on Migratory Species to develop a hemispheric initiative, all with key sites at the core. So through supporting them, we're really hoping that will help lever additional support and opportunities for many of the sites. All of this has been made possible by the wonderful team that you see on the screen now. We're currently, I think, 18 people on the team. So this is the WHSRN Executive Office team. It also serves as Manomet's Flyways program that houses the Executive Office team. So I'd really like to take the opportunity to thank all of them. I won't call them out, but they're distributed across the Americas, I think in 10 countries and 5 first languages. And really none of what I've just presented about where we're going now would be possible without them. So with that, I'll just leave you with this sort of final message in Spanish, but I'll translate it. So it says, flying is the easy bit. The challenge is the safe landing. And that's really what WHSRN is all about. It's providing that safe landing for these wonderful, truly inspiring hemispheric migrants. So with that, thank you very much. I'll leave you with this wonderful image from a painting by Pablo Cannavaro of Eskimo curlew, a species now unfortunately almost certainly extinct, flying over the pampas. If you would like to support our work, there is a QR code there, and we're doing the best we can with the resources that are available to try and make sure that Eskimo curlew is the one and only shorebird species that go extinct in the Americas. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Really exciting story. And to me, what amazes me is that all of this happened or started at a time when not everyone had internet or the same communication tools that we have today. And today we struggle in communicating conservation. What about that time? It has to be an inspiration story for all of us. So we have some very good questions here that I will be reading for you to answer. There are some crazy ones, but I think this is really good. I might start with this one. It says, if WHSRN had unlimited resources for just 5 years, what bold experiment would you launch immediately?
Wow, that's quite a question. I think where I would put the resources would be to secure areas of habitat that are still intact. And this happens to be one of our foci at the moment. And I mentioned it earlier, the mangrove coastline of northern South America. Yeah, in terms of its importance for shorebirds, it is up there with the most important areas in the Americas, if not globally. We are extremely fortunate that it is still relatively intact, but there is a limited window of time that will be the case. There are there are major offshore oil and gas areas that are going into production. So that's really driving very rapid development across that geography. So getting in there now to secure that coastline and ensure any developments are happening are as sustainable as possible for me really be the top priority. It's a chance to get ahead of the game. All too often we are fighting battles which are essentially already lost.
Thank you, Rob. We have a message I'm going to detour from Germán Montero, who's the director of Ambiente Sur. And he says, thank you, Rob and Wisdom, for the 20 years of sustained work being together with all of us in the good times and the bad times. So that's a message from all the team at Ambiente Sur. The next question is, you showed overall shorebird trends. Are there some success stories where populations are increasing?
Yes, there are. The best examples we have are American oystercatcher along the Atlantic and Gulf Coast of the US, which after a sustained effort of 15 to 20 years now has seen, I think it's a 47% increase. Similarly for piping plover, the increase is not as significant, but certainly the population has stabilized, if not increased, depending on the specific geographies and populations involved. So we do know it's possible. It's just a question, and we really know how to do it. It's really just a question of the investment that is required.
And that leads to our next question, that is, what are the critical needs of WHSRN and partners to be more successful, or maybe just expand these success stories?
I'm not going to say financial resources because that's a given. It's really it's building capacity across the boards in multiple geographies, not just within Latin America. It's one thing with recent changes in actually both the US and Canada. We're seeing a significant loss of capacity as people have moved on from their jobs and they remain vacant. So there is a significant capacity gap. And even if that we had unlimited resources, financial available for the next 5 years, we would be struggling to spend them just because we really need to bring more people on board to be able to do that in an effective way.
And you showed us some of the strategies that you are doing, like we're putting our hope in the youth through Experiencia Ambientalia and all the capacity building that we're doing, the support through the Manomet small grants, that it's supporting WHSRN sites as well. So there is hope in many ways that people can also support those initiatives at Manomet and WHSRN with the QR code that's still there in the screen. So the next question would be, is there a particular moment in WHSRN's history for you that defines why this network matters? From all of the stories that you said, one that we can summarize again.
I'm going to sort of try and get around answering that question by saying every time we designate a new site, that is a new and exciting opportunity. On the one hand, it would be wonderful to be able to be present at every designation event. Firstly, to ensure that every site has an actual celebration of its designation, and then to bring people together at those events. It's perhaps not the sort of sexiest thing to sell, but if there's one thing I've learned from my time working with WHSRN, at the end of the day, it really is the human connections, those that are made between individuals that actually make the difference. I didn't point it out at the time, but in the photo of the 20th anniversary celebration at Panama Bay, which was also the designation of Panama Bay. The mayor of Panama was present, and he's actually now the Minister of Environment for Panama. And so, there we have a great ambassador who has been connected to the cause of shorebird conservation for many years, and I believe it was really the designation event in Panama that was the start of that. So again, it's really the designation of every new site is a wonderful new opportunity. It's when local communities, local partners are committing to the cause and joining an ever-growing flock of committed and passionate shorebird conservationists.
We have one final question that it takes us back to shorebirds. It's despite the efforts made that no doubt have helped. Oh my God, more questions are coming in. I think you inspired people just in the last second. So going back to the question, despite the efforts made that no doubt have helped, is it understood why shorebirds continue to decline throughout all of the rates that you just showed on the slides?
The very simple answer is yes. The more complex answer is we know the major cause is the sort of the relative weights that each cause plays in the declines of any one particular species or population. Not really. So there's most definitely the need for more research to better understand the drivers of decline in particular populations or species. Having said that, we do know enough to take action now. So, my concern would be, if we say, oh, if we just prioritize research, we're just going to end up documenting better more and more declines until there's nothing left to decline. So, we need to continue undertaking research, but we really need to step up our conservation on the ground. And the wonderful thing about shorebird conservation, because of the scale at which it happens, is if we deliver conservation for shorebirds, we are delivering so many other benefits for other biodiversity, and at the end of the day, for the entire ecosystems that we ourselves depend upon.
Yeah, the last one that I think it's a funny one, a nice one to close. It's what kind of cake is WHSRN having for their 40th?
That's I don't think my mum's probably listening in, but if she were, I would ask that it would be a nice fruit cake made by my mum. Maybe my mum will share the recipe with somebody who will be keen to make one. Actually, what I really hope for and really our intent is not one celebration, but a whole year of celebrations. And it would be wonderful to think that there will be cakes at many, if not all, sites within the network. And I would hope that that will mean a true diversity of different types of cake, just to reflect the amazing diversity of peoples and cultures that we have within the network.
Yes, hoping that at least we can have one here in our country that we're sharing the same city. Not just calling out Rob live so we can share cake for with
I
them.
do have my mum's cake recipe, so I might be convinced to have a go.
If we do, I'll make sure that we share that with everyone so they can see it online. So thank you, Rob, for joining and sharing this amazing piece of history with us. I don't think that we have this in writing anywhere, all of the stories that you just shared with us. So this is very valuable. And just to wrap up, I want to thank everyone again to be here with us today. We will be sharing the video in both English and Spanish in Manomet's YouTube channel in the following day. So you can also share it with everyone that was not able to be here. And a last reminder is that Manomet Conservation Sciences is a nonprofit based in Manomet, Massachusetts, but our work spans throughout the Americas, from Alaska to the southern tip of the Americas at Tierra del Fuego. So if you'd like to stay connected, please follow Manomet on social media, subscribe to our newsletter, and if it's within your capacity to support Manomet, your generosity will make our science-driven conservation have much more impacts of some of what Rob was just sharing with us. So thanks again for joining us, and have a great day, rest of your day. I'm complicating myself speaking both languages in this webinar, but anyway, I hope everyone had fun and see you around. Share some cake. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.